There is a part of your body that your doctor checks every time you come in for a visit, and almost no one over 65 knows why. It takes less than 10 seconds to check. It costs nothing. And the information it carries about how many years you may have left is something most physicians are trained to notice but rarely explain. If you are over 65, what I am about to share with you may be the most important thing you hear this year. Stay with me. Emotional setup. There are mornings when you wake up and something feels different. Not pain exactly, more like a quiet heaviness, maybe in your legs, maybe in your chest. You shake it off. You make your tea or your coffee, you sit by the window and you tell yourself you are fine. And perhaps you are. But somewhere beneath that routine there is a part of you that wonders, truly wonders, how much time is left, and whether your body is quietly trying to tell you something you have not yet learned to hear. Nobody around you sees it. The people who love you ask how you are, and you say you are fine, because that is what you have always said. But you know this feeling. You have known it for a while now. That quiet awareness that the body keeps a kind of ledger, and that what shows up at the edges of it, in the places we least expect, sometimes tells the truest story of all. That is what this video is about, and I want you to listen carefully, because what you are about to hear has helped people understand their own bodies in ways that changed the course of their later years. Credibility bridge. Physicians who study aging and cardiovascular health, the doctors who specialize in what the body does after 65, have known for decades that certain physical signals, when read correctly, can offer a remarkably accurate picture of what is happening inside. These are not theories from a wellness blog. They are the same checks performed in hospitals, in cardiac wards, in the offices of the specialists who treat men and women in their 70s and 80s. People who have walked this path, who have listened to their bodies rather than dismissing what they felt, have often added years to their lives simply by paying attention to the right things at the right time. And that is why what you are about to hear matters more than you realize. We will get to point 5 in a moment, and I want you to pay very close attention when we do, because it is the one that most people dismiss, and it is the one that changes everything. Core content segment. Now we discuss 7 points. Point 1. The pulse that tells the truth. Your foot has a pulse, and what that pulse feels like tells your doctor something your face never could. On the top of your foot, just below the ankle, there is an artery called the dorsalis pedis. When a doctor presses 2 fingers gently against that spot, they are not performing a ritual, they are reading a story. The strength of the pulse, how easily it can be felt, how steady it is, how full it seems, reflects the condition of your blood vessels all the way from your heart to your extremities. A strong, easy pulse means blood is moving freely. A weak or absent pulse means something, somewhere along that path, is narrowed or obstructed. There was a man named Harold, 71 years old, who had been to his doctor 7 times in 3 years and never once thought to ask what the foot check meant. He assumed it was routine, something doctors did without thinking. One afternoon, his new physician sat down and explained what she had been finding. The pulse on his left foot was significantly weaker than his right. She referred him to a specialist that same week. What they discovered, and what they were able to treat, gave Harold, in his own words, at least 10 more good years. Most people never ask. They assume if something were wrong, they would be told. But medicine moves quickly, and explanations are often the first thing cut short. Harold almost left that day without ever knowing what his own foot had been trying to say. Pay attention to the feet. They are further from the heart than any other part of the body, and that distance is precisely what makes them so honest. But here is something I want you to sit with for a moment before we continue. How long has it been since you truly listened to what your body was telling you, rather than simply waiting for someone else to notice? Point 2. The Ankle-Brachial Index, the number that predicts your future. There is a simple, painless test that takes less than 15 minutes and can predict your risk of heart attack or stroke better than most cholesterol numbers. And the majority of seniors have never had it done. It is called the Ankle-Brachial Index, or ABI. A blood pressure cuff is placed on your arm, then on your ankle. The ratio between the two readings reveals the health of the arteries in your legs. A score above 1 means blood is flowing normally. A score below 0.9 means peripheral artery disease is likely present, and that comes with a cardiovascular mortality risk 2 to 4 times higher than someone with a normal score. Below 0.5% means critical narrowing. And the quiet, frightening truth is that many people walk around with a score like that for years, feeling only mild leg fatigue that they blame on age. A woman named Evelyn, 74, had been telling her family for 2 years that her legs felt heavy when she walked to the mailbox. Her daughter assumed she needed new shoes. Her son thought she needed to walk more. Her doctor, in a brief appointment, had noted mild discomfort without pursuing it further. When a different physician finally ordered an ABI test, the result was 0.62. She had significant peripheral artery disease. With treatment, lifestyle changes, and regular monitoring, Evelyn walked unaided at her granddaughter's wedding 3 years later. She said afterward, "I nearly missed it, not the wedding, my life. The cost of not knowing is not always sudden. Sometimes it is slow, a gradual narrowing of the world, measured in the walks you stop taking and the stairs you stop climbing, until one day you realize the life you had has quietly become something smaller than it needed to be." Ask for this test. Say the words Ankle-Brachial Index. Write them down if you have to. It is a number worth knowing. Point 3. Cold feet are not always about temperature. When the feet are consistently cold, not because of a cool room, not because of thin socks, but cold in a way that does not resolve with warmth, the body is communicating something that deserves to be taken seriously. Chronic cold in the extremities is one of the earliest signs that circulation is being compromised. The body, in its wisdom, prioritizes. When blood flow is restricted, it protects the core, the heart, the lungs, the vital organs, and the feet receive what is left over. Over time, this reduced blood flow can accelerate the aging of the tissues in the legs and feet, affect nerve function, and increase the risk of ulcers and wounds that heal poorly or not at all. There was a retired teacher named Bernard, 70 years old, who had worn heavy wool socks to bed every night for a decade. He had grown so accustomed to his cold feet that he no longer thought of it as a symptom. It was just Bernard. Cold feet Bernard. At a routine checkup following a mild episode of dizziness, his new physician asked about his feet. Bernard laughed and said they were always cold. The doctor did not laugh. The examination that followed revealed early-stage peripheral vascular disease and the beginning of nerve damage in both feet. Bernard said later that the socks had become a way of not having to think about it. We adapt to what is uncomfortable until we no longer notice it. And sometimes what we stop noticing is the thing that needed the most attention. Cold feet, consistently, are not a quirk. They are a conversation your body is trying to have with you. Point 4. The color of your feet when you stand. The color your feet turn when you lower them from a resting position to standing is one of the most telling and least discussed indicators of vascular health in adults over 65. In healthy circulation, lowering the feet causes only a mild change in color, a slight deepening of the natural tone as blood flows in with gravity. But in compromised circulation, something different happens. The feet may turn a dusky red or purple within seconds of being lowered, a phenomenon doctors call dependent rubor. This flushing occurs because the blood vessels are no longer able to regulate flow normally. They have become rigid or narrowed, and gravity overwhelms their capacity to adjust. It looks dramatic precisely because it is significant. A man named Clifford, 68 years old, noticed this for the first time while sitting on the edge of his bed one evening. His feet, as he swung them to the floor, turned a deep, dark red that surprised him. He watched them for a few minutes, thought they must have been pressed against the mattress, and forgot about it. 3 weeks later, he mentioned it almost as an aside to his cardiologist. The cardiologist stood up from his desk immediately. "You should have led with that," he said quietly. What followed was a series of tests that revealed significant arterial disease that, caught when it was, could still be meaningfully treated. Nobody is going to say this to your face, so I will. If you have ever seen this happen to your own feet, that darkening, that sudden flush of color, and said nothing to your doctor, please do not let this video end without making that call. Color is not vanity. When it comes to the feet of someone over 65, color is data. Learn to read it. Point 5. Wounds that will not heal. A cut or sore on the foot that does not heal within 2 weeks is not a minor inconvenience. In someone over 65, it is a medical urgency, and the reason it matters goes far deeper than the wound itself. Healing requires blood. It requires oxygen-rich circulation, reaching the site of injury and delivering the materials the body uses to repair itself. When circulation is compromised, as it is in peripheral artery disease and increasingly in those with diabetes or high blood pressure, that delivery system is impaired. Wounds that would heal in days for a younger, healthier person can linger for weeks or months in someone whose vessels are narrowed, and in the most serious cases, what begins as a small sore can progress to something that threatens the limb and, ultimately, the life. There was a woman named Ruth Ann, 72, who developed a small blister on her heel from a new pair of shoes. She treated it herself with bandages and antibiotic cream for 3 weeks. When her daughter finally insisted she see a doctor, the wound had not improved. The assessment that followed revealed severe peripheral artery disease. Ruth Ann required a procedure to restore blood flow to her foot. She kept the foot, but the physician who treated her said that had she waited another month, the outcome could have been very different. A wound that will not heal is the body waving a flag. It is not asking for a bandage. It is asking for blood to be allowed back in. Never wait more than 2 weeks with a wound on the feet. That timeline is not cautious. It is the difference between a procedure and an amputation. What comes next is the part that will stay with you long after this video ends. Do not skip it. Point 6. Pain that comes only when you walk. If walking causes pain in your calves, thighs, or hips, pain that reliably begins after a certain distance and just as reliably disappears when you stop and rest, there is a name for what you are experiencing, and it is not simply aging. This pattern of pain is called intermittent claudication, and it is one of the clearest signs that blood flow to the muscles of the legs is restricted. When the muscles demand more oxygen during walking and the arteries cannot deliver it, the muscles protest with a cramp or an ache that forces you to stop. You rest, the demand drops, the blood catches up and the pain fades. Then you walk again, and it returns. It is predictable, and that predictability is itself a diagnostic signal. Healthy muscles do not behave this way. Muscles being starved of oxygen do. A man named Walter, 67, had been telling people for 2 years that he just wasn't a walker anymore. He'd retired from a job that kept him active and assumed the slowing down was natural. His wife noticed he always stopped at the same bench on their evening walks, that he had chosen their routes without saying so, based on how far he could go before the pain started. When she mentioned it to their doctor, Walter reluctantly described what he had been experiencing. He was referred within the week. He had significant peripheral artery disease in both legs. He was treated. He walks farther now than he did 10 years ago. Do not accept pain as the price of aging. Pain is a signal. Precision, exactly what is happening, and it is a description worth listening to. If you have stayed with me this far, what comes next was written for you specifically, because it is the only point in this video that gives you something you can do tonight in your own home without a doctor's appointment. Point 7. The test you can do right now in your own home. Everything shared in this video points to one quiet, actionable truth: awareness, practiced early, changes outcomes. You can find your own dorsalis pedis pulse right now. Sit comfortably and place your foot flat. Using the tips of your index and middle fingers, not your thumb, press gently along the top of your foot, roughly in line with the second toe, moving slowly toward the ankle. You are feeling for a subtle rhythmic pulse beneath the skin. In a person with healthy circulation, it is usually easy to find. If you cannot find it on one foot but can on the other, note it. If you cannot find it on either foot, note that too, and mention it at your next medical appointment. This is not a diagnosis, but it is information, and information in the years after 65 is a form of protection. There are other things worth checking, whether your feet feel equally warm on both sides, whether standing causes any unusual color change, whether any sores or skin changes have appeared that you have been meaning to address. These observations cost you nothing but a few quiet minutes, and they are the kind of attention that has, in the lives of people like Harold and Evelyn and Walter and Ruth Ann, made all the difference. The body has been speaking to you for years. It did not stop speaking when you turned 65. If anything, it began speaking more clearly, because it has more to say. Deep reflection segment. Time moves differently when you reach this stage of life. You feel it in ways that are hard to explain to someone younger. The way a season seems to pass in what feels like a week. The way photographs from only a few years ago already feel distant. The hands in those photographs are younger. The faces are smoother. And somewhere between then and now, without a single announcement, time kept moving in its quiet, relentless way. You have carried a great deal. You have outlasted things you were not sure you could outlast. You have sat with grief that had no resolution and found a way to keep going anyway. The body you are living in right now has carried all of that with you. Every loss, every season, every long night, and every ordinary Tuesday morning. It has been faithful to you in ways you perhaps have not always been faithful to it. There are people who are no longer here. People whose faces you still see clearly, whose voices you can still hear. Some of them did not have the information they needed. Some of them waited too long. Some of them said they would get it checked, and then one day there was no more time for getting things checked. You are still here. And being still here, while it is not a guarantee of anything, is at the very least an opportunity, a chance to listen more carefully than you have before, to take the quiet signals seriously, to give the body the attention it has always deserved. Empowerment shift. Here is what I want you to understand about everything shared in this video. Knowing is not the same as worrying. These are very different things. Worry is passive. It circles without landing. Knowing is active. It gives you something to do. And what you can do right now, starting today, is small and real and entirely within your reach. You can check your foot pulse this evening and note what you feel. You can write down 3 words, Ankle-Brachial Index, and ask your doctor at your next appointment whether you have had this test. You can pay attention the next time you walk a familiar route to whether there is pain that begins and then stops when you rest. You can look at a wound on your foot that has been there for 2 weeks and decide that today is the day you make the call. None of these things are heroic. None of them require you to be someone different than who you are. They require only that you decide your remaining years are worth the small act of paying attention. And I believe, because you are still watching, that you have already made that decision. The final point, and the words I want to leave you with, are the reason I made this video. Stay with me. Final closing. We began today with the idea that there is a part of your body, a quiet, overlooked part, that has been trying to tell you something. And perhaps as you sit here now, you understand that this was never really about a foot. It was about the willingness to listen, to take seriously the signals that the years have a way of making us dismiss, to believe that the information still matters, that the time left still has shape and possibility, and that the quality of that time is not entirely beyond your influence. You have lived long enough to know that the things we attend to tend to reward us. The garden we water grows. The relationships we tend deepen. The body we listen to speaks more clearly over time, and sometimes, not always but sometimes, it tells us something that allows us to stay a little longer, to see one more season, to be present for one more moment that, if we are honest, we know we would not trade for anything in this world. Take care of yourself, because time never waits. Call to action. If something in this video touched you, if it reminded you of something you have been quietly carrying, then share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you would like to continue this conversation, there is another video waiting for you that speaks to the warning signs your hands and skin reveal about your heart health after 65. I will see you there.